Metal lathers and millwrights perform tasks in the course of their profession that frequently bring them in contact with asbestos on a regular basis, even today. Because of the heat-producing nature of heavy industrial machinery and corresponding fire hazard, the use of asbestos insulation was common. In addition to disassembling such machinery for repair and routine maintenance, metal lathers would need to cut, trim, and fit asbestos-coated materials such as gaskets and seals. This process involved cutting and grinding, both of which were liable to result in the generation of dust-containing asbestos fibers. Much of this work was performed in the closed environments where asbestos dust was concentrated. Where was the protection? Prior to the late 1970s, the health hazards of asbestos exposure were a closely guarded secret by the large corporate and business interests involved in the manufacture and sales of asbestos products. Evidence of the connection between asbestos exposure and respiratory disease existed as far back as 1897. By 1931, the use of asbestos was tightly regulated in the UK. No such regulations existed in the US, however, although scientific studies, many commissioned by asbestos and insurance corporations themselves, clearly showed that asbestos was a cause of respiratory disease. The industry itself engaged in a conspiracy of silence. Even the U.S. government was complicit, although government agencies did in fact issue safety guidelines in 1943. These guidelines did not have the force of law, however, and were rarely enforced. In 1977, documents were discovered in the headquarters of a corporation known as Asbestos. These documents consisted of letters between the CEOs of major corporations in which it was agreed that information about the harmful effects of asbestos would cut deeply into corporate profits, and that such information should be withheld from the public in the interest of return on investment and stock price. Since then, many asbestos companies have literally paid with their corporate lives. Several asbestos companies have gone bankrupt, while others have been purchased by larger corporations legally known as successors. Determining liability. When determining liability in an asbestos case, it is necessary to prove negligence. In the case of industries in which asbestos was used, this can pose a number of challenges. In the case of metal lathers, millwrights, and other machinists, it must be shown that the company at which the victims were employed was aware of the asbestos hazard, yet chose to use such materials anyway, or failed to remove such materials when health hazards became known. This can be very difficult to prove, mainly for the reasons outlined earlier. Because the asbestos industry was so secretive about the information, it is likely that many third-party companies were unaware of the hazards contained in the products that were being sold to them. In most asbestos lawsuits, there winds up being multiple defendants, which may include the asbestos manufacturer or its successors, the company that marketed and sold the substance, and even the company that installed such products. Non-occupational asbestos exposure. There have been cases in which family members have suffered from secondhand exposure to asbestos due to the dust brought home on the clothing and in the hair of asbestos workers. These cases are even more challenging, however. Courts in the U.S. and the U.K. have ruled that industries could not have reasonably foreseen the hazards of such secondary exposure and fear unlimited liability on the part of corporations. Those whose family members were metal lathers or other types of machinists should discuss their legal options with a qualified asbestos litigator. Thank you for watching. This video was produced by Asbestos.Net, a leading resource on all aspects of asbestos and mesothelioma. Our priority is to inform victims about the devastating effects of asbestos exposure, mesothelioma, asbestos cancer, asbestosis, and other asbestos-related diseases, and to advise them with a wealth of information. Individuals whose lives have been touched by mesothelioma have numerous questions and concerns. Their caregivers and family members also need accurate, reliable information. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with mesothelioma or asbestos cancer and need more information, we invite you to visit and explore the thousands of pages of oncologist-reviewed material on Asbestos.net,
to call our convenient toll-free number shown below and speak with a mesothelioma specialist, or to use the simple contact form found at Asbestos.net to request a free copy of our informative books, custom inserts, and DVD. Asbestos.net, information and help for patients and families.